And we welcome into the Hyundai Texans Radio studio Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, thanks for being with us.
Fellas, good to be here.
Congratulations on the victory. It's week 4. We'll get into all of it about Pittsburgh in a moment here, but let's reminisce a little bit about beating the Jaguars on the road. Real great win for the Texans, winning by 20, and a lot of the phases coming together, real complimentary football being displayed.
Yeah, I mean, really credit to the players and the coaches for the week. I want to say it's probably one of our harder weeks of practice, but it was a tough week of practice. We were out there on Thursday, had a lot of plays. It was hot. Players were taxed, but they pushed through it, mentally and physically, got themselves ready to go. And we were able to get contributions really from all 3 phases, which to win in this league, you're going to have to, that's how you win games. So it's not going to be about one side of the ball doing one thing one week, and then the next week, the other side does a little bit better than the other. At some point, you're going to need everybody to contribute, and I think that was emblematic of where we were on Sunday. It was a great team victory.
Okay, there's one day going to be a 30 for 30 on Andrew Beck's kickoff return, so we need sound and quotes from everybody, Nick. So where were you when Andrew Beck dropped the kickoff, and what are you thinking at that moment? Can you say it on radio?
Sure. No, I mean, it was really bad football turned good football. So it was a little bit of not a mortar kick. I mean, it was placed there a little bit short. So Mike was coming up, Andrew was going back, and just hope that there's some communication about who's going to handle the ball. And they end up colliding with each other, and then you just got to let it play itself out. What happened, really, the coverage unit, all 10, 11 guys ended up on a inside the right hash, almost on the numbers, so they really didn't have anything leveraged to the backside. So when Andrew started that way, there was maybe one player there, and then they kind of pursued the ball. Half joking. I know everybody's kind of joking, but Andrew, for the position, is probably one of the more athletic players. Like, he actually runs well, even going back to to Denver last few years. I want to say it was like week 2 or week 1 against Seattle. I mean, he caught a seamer out there, something near the sideline from Wilson. So Andrew runs well for his size. So he's got good size. He's got good toughness. He's got good straight line speed. And the fact that the coverage was really pinned themselves in, I think once Andrew kind of got ahead of steam, then he kind of got moving, and he recorded one of the faster times ever for whatever that size. But, it's really not sound football, but sometimes guys have to make football plays. We're just fortunate that we're able to retain possession of the football, and it turned into being a pretty, significant play in the game.
Also on special teams, Will Anderson, blocked field goal. Apparently he missed the first field goal trip. He wasn't on the field for that one, but he was for the second one and got the block. So good day on special teams overall. Great day.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get a blocked field goal and you score in a kicking game, that's usually a pretty good day. So other than the one kickoff return that Agnew had, who's a really difficult cover, we were able to kind of control field position there. They didn't have any punt return yards. So, I mean, some of those kicks were good. Some we got a bounce. So sometimes things kind of go your way. But I think even just the whole Will on field goal block, you're going to use your best players. You're going to use all your players. And if they give you an opportunity for an advantage to make a play, then we're going to use them. You see a lot of starting caliber players that play in a punt team. So you only have 47, 48 guys you can bring to the game. So you're going to need everybody to maybe do more than one thing other than maybe a quarterback if they can. So I would say in Will's case, Will was close the week before. So I'm sure they're going to be conscious of him in field goal protection now. So might have to come up with a different way to see if we can create some pressure, against a good kicker this week.
I couldn't help but think about when Will blocked that, a story you had said about his time at Alabama, about here's the alpha of the alphas at Alabama, like the guy that does everything defensively, and yet there he is sitting front row and center for a special teams meeting at Alabama in college. I mean, it's just kind of amazing that those things translate from high school to college to pro, and there it comes up in the biggest moment of the game.
Yeah, anytime you're evaluating a player, you're looking for consistency across the board in all areas. So do they do it all the time, or is it a one-time thing, or is there a reason they're doing it? CJ and Will both sit in the front row in our meetings here. So they're front and center. They're right in front. They're paying attention. They're engaged. And and Will did the same thing. I'm sure CJ was the same way there. So whoever the players are, they're going to be who they are.
Yep.
And that's part of our evaluation process to see if there's consistency in how they approach their job.
All right, so your quarterback, let's leave the on-field stuff alone for a moment. He says stuff like, pressure is a privilege. Nick, that's amazing. I mean, this guy is so young, but his process, the way he goes about his work is impressive. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a propensity sometimes to put associate an age or a number with youthfulness. But even regardless of your age, you can have, I would say, experience and maturity beyond your years. And I think that's one of the things that stood out with him through the process. He's very confident in himself. He believes in himself. And he cares about winning. And he's very competitive. And those things have continued to manifest themselves from, call it May, June, July, August, and into the start of the season. And, when you have success as a team and individually, then you start to maybe believe, not that you question it in the beginning, but, what we do is hard. This league is very hard. Each week is a significant challenge. When you're a younger player, you're going to have to deal with things and face things that you may or may not have had to deal with in college, regardless of where you played, regardless of the stature of the program. So I think it really speaks to who CJ is and kind of what he's about. And you're looking for just, I would say, continued growth and improvement and maturity. And I would say we're still kind of in the early part of the season. For younger players, especially rookies, once we get to week 8, 9, 10, can you continue that for the duration of the season? Because you still have another 8, 9 weeks in front of you. So it's going to take a certain level of mental toughness and fortitude to get from start to finish.
Along those lines, Nick, you talk about that, and it's a huge part of their experience as a rookie, as a young player. How much is the adversity that a young guy has faced matter to you in the evaluation process? Because you talk about CJ. He's the last one to get an invite to Elite 11. He really didn't have a lot of teams on him until after Elite 11. He goes to Ohio State. He sits behind Justin. He's got to fight for the job. Then Ewers is there. Tank Dell, same thing. Tank has gone to high school, and then he's got to go the junior college route. He gets to Houston. Nobody really knows who he is. They've gone through adversity. How much did that sort of matter in your evaluation process?
It's a big part of it. So the reality is we're all going to face challenges. We face challenges every single day. And then when you get into the NFL, I'd say there's a little bit more of a heightened, there's eyes on you. Everybody's watching your every move. And it's not going to go your way all the time. So you're going to have to bounce back. You're going to have to put a play behind you. You're going to have to put a game behind you. You're going to get blown out. What do you do the next week? And this league is really designed for everybody to be right about 500. So everybody, it's the same salary cap for everybody, same amount of roster spots. So you're going to have to deal with something, and we're going to deal with things as the year progresses as well. We've had to deal with some, I would say, personnel issues from an injury standpoint, but how do you handle it? Do you make excuses? Do you move forward? Do you self-correct? And you build a little, I just alluded to, you build the mental toughness and mental fortitude when you have to face some things. So, look, some have it a little bit easier than others, but at some point you're going to have to do something difficult and face difficult challenges. And a true measure of who you are is how you handle that situation.
All right, so we visited on the first day of training camp. And if that time I got my crystal ball out and said, hey, week 3, you're going to throw for 280, 2 touchdowns, no sacks, win by 20 with 3 offensive linemen who are not here today, the first day of training camp, what would your reaction be?
Maybe we're playing a different team or a different game, or we're in a different sport. So, but look, this is the reality. And I know it's kind of cliche to say the NFL is week to week, right, but it's really day to day. So, there's going to be things that we're going to have to deal with this week, but we can't lose sight of we have to get ready to play a good Pittsburgh Steelers team. And they really don't care what we're dealing with or what's going on, and vice versa. They've lost some players, some really good players, but that's just the business that we're in, and you really have to embrace that. If you have the right mindset and the right attitude and the right approach, like you welcome that, and you want to push forward. And really, from our perspective, it's nice to win, but now we have to put that behind us and get ready for the next opportunity that's in front of us, and then try to go 1-0 this week.
Okay, let's put it behind us then. It's behind us, so let's talk Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a Watt. They also have a Highsmith. Defense is pretty good. Pickens, a lot of players that a lot of people know. Nick, let's get the scouting report of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I would just say big picture, you're probably talking about one of the model franchises in the history of the NFL. Since 1969, you've had 3 coaches, and Coach Knoll, Coach Cowher, and now Coach Tomlin. Coach Tomlin is, I think, number of wins, second from a win standpoint, but he's got the highest winning percentage. So they're a model of consistency, and that starts with, the ownership group at the top with the Rooney family. I'd say Kevin Colbert was certainly a big part of what they did and what they've built. They've always been a good, I would say, defensive team. They've go back to the Steel Curtain days, but they've always had good edge players, from Joey Porter to Gilden to Greg Lloyd to Kevin Green. And, you alluded to it, John. Watt and Highsmith are probably the best tandem in the league, or one of the best tandems in the league. They present a lot of problems. So good on defense, good young players. They've kind of had a little bit of turnover at the inside linebacker spot, signing Landon, Houston's own Landon Roberts, Quan Alexander, who's experienced, was in San Francisco, was with the Jets, signed Holcomb in free agency. Micah Fitzpatrick is probably one of the best players in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball, creates a lot of negative plays, good tackler, really instinctive. And they've kind of, turned the corner position over to a degree, signed Patrick Peterson, who's had a very illustrious career, drafted Joey Porter, junior in second round, who's big, long, and fast. They added Dez here after training camp, Chandron Sullivan there inside, added Keanu Neal at safety. So they play a lot of people. They have good depth. Even without Hayward, who's a really good football player, they have good front. Ogunjobi's given them a lot of good snaps here. So, I don't want to say we're going to be talking about this every week, but each week we're going to be facing a pretty good front seven. And offensively, Kenny's definitely made progress from last year to this year. So they were, I want to say, 7-2 their last 9 games last year, and Kenny was a big part of that. Kind of his arc and improvement and development has been a big part of it. Najee's been 1,000-yard back-to-back seasons. Warren, undrafted player who's kind of sneaky, sort of getting himself into the mix here a little bit. Freiermuth's a reliable target, drafted Washington in the second round. They'll be without Deontay Johnson here for a little bit. He's one of their better offensive players. But Pickens is, I would say, rare. His combination of size, speed, and athleticism, and a good, solid veteran offensive line. They drafted Broderick Jones in the first round. So a good in the kicking game. Boswell is a really good kicker, kicks in a hard climate. And then Killebrew, I'd say, has been a solid performer in a kicking game. So they're a good football team. They're 2-1. They scored 2 touchdowns on defense a couple weeks ago against Cleveland. Offensively, they hit a big play against Vegas there the other night, that Calvin Austin on third down. And then they had a good drive there in the third quarter, resulted in a touchdown there from Pickett to Freiermuth. So a big challenge this week. I think the biggest thing is, you can't let players that can ruin the game. Yeah. So, look, TJ's, I think JJ said something about this. Like, he's the best defensive player in the league. Probably be hard to argue with him. He does really everything well, and he plays really hard, and he's very gifted. So, it'll be a big challenge, but I think our players are looking forward to the opportunity to try to capitalize on some of the things we did last week, and then see if we can do that again against a good Pittsburgh team.
Nick, one of my favorites in this draft class was Keanu Benton. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, no, he's actually starting to come on here a little bit. I think without Cam being in there, it's an opportunity for Benton. He's a little bit more 0-1 technique, kind of plays on the nose, but he has good athleticism for his size. He's probably maybe a little more agile and nifty than maybe we thought he was. In the sack the other night, he kind of got on the edge of James there in Vegas. So it looks like he's going to be a good player. It looks like they're players that they drafted over the last few years. This year, last year, year before, which I think Kevin was a part of that. Looks like they're going to be some of their better players. So they've been a really good draft and developed team. I think they kind of provide a template and a blueprint of kind of how you want to build an organization and a franchise. And it kind of just speaks to their history. And, you're talking about one of the more esteemed franchises in football and in sports.
Nick, Texans running game got a little bit better against the Jaguars. There was some progress there. What are you seeing overall as that continues to develop?
Yeah, a little bit more volume-based, but we're able to churn out some yards there at the end of the game in 4 minutes. So, again, we talked about this last week. It's just getting the run started, getting the blockers distributed appropriately, and the backs just trusting the read, trusting the blocks, and then stick your foot in the ground and getting vertical. But, DP had a couple good runs. Motor had some good runs, so we were able to churn out some yards and some clock. So just try to keep building. And if we can the big thing is just eliminating some of the 0 negative runs. So if we kind of, that's the next phase here, eliminate those and then just kind of keep building 3-4 yards of carry. It puts you in 2nd and 7, 2nd and 6. So you're not in a situation, you're a little bit behind the sticks.
On the other side of the ball, run defense, Nick, obviously against the Colts, struggled. There was some tackling issues. We talked about that. But I feel like there were two pieces that were added back after injury, Blake Cashman and Jimmy Ward. And they weren't on the field for every single play. But they were two vets that seemed to kind of calm everything down, and everybody kind of raised the play too. How'd you kind of look at the run defense, and what impact do those two bring to the run defense also?
Yeah, I think overall we were able to kind of limit the explosives, something we talked about before the game. They popped a couple runs in there, so some of it is just kind of fitting in the right tracking angles and being in the right position. But by and large, we were in a better position. Blake certainly made a positive impact on the game. I think Jimmy made his presence felt not only on the field but off the field as well, with his leadership, with his toughness, with his playing style. It's a shot we get Petrie back this week as well. So, having guys like Petrie and Ward and Cashman and, Perriman at some point will be back here. So, again, run defense is just about being disciplined. It's about making sure that your gap's sound and taking care of your responsibilities and being in position to make the play and make the tackle. And just don't give them a lot of space. Yep. That's the key.
It's Legends Homecoming presented by Ford. J.J. Watt gets into the Ring of Honor this weekend, Nick. Give us a J.J. Watt prevailing memory, thought, when you first noticed him, something that really stands out as I bring up the name J.J. Watt.
Yeah, I mean, everything that J.J.'s received, he's earned. And he's being recognized as one of the best players in the history of the organization, and rightfully so. I mean, the impact that he had on the field, or off the field, was almost as big as the impact that he had on the field. But there was a stretch there, for that 3 or 4 year stretch, where, I mean, I don't want to say he was unblockable, but he was arguably unblockable. But I remember we were actually playing, the Texans here. We were running weak side zone play, and we were running away from him. And it was, we'll just run away from him, and, we'll be able to cut him off and make the play. Well, he beats the guard to the spot, and there's a massive crease, but we get tackled in the backfield because, J.J. made the play. So I think one of the things that kind of gets lost with him, he was a very instinctive, very aware player. He could obviously affect the quarterback in a lot of different ways, but he also knew if he couldn't get to the quarterback, he had enough awareness to get himself in the passing lane. So I don't know what the number is, but there aren't probably too many defensive linemen that have as many batted balls or passes defense that he has over his career. So I know we had the one play here, he tipped it up. I don't know if it's a playoff game against Cincinnati or whatever it was, where he popped it up in the air and returned it for a touchdown. But I would say the size, speed, strength, but his mental acuity and his awareness and instinctiveness was as good as some of the other physical attributes and qualities that he had. So a credit to him, and, this is a well-deserved award and recognition. And I'm sure at some point there'll be another, probably 5 years from now, another opportunity for him to be recognized in some capacity.
Nick, you know how I feel about I love to ask about preparation, but when you're preparing for a player like JJ, a guy like Aaron Donald, how does it impact the preparation knowing that, look, if we're going to do anything today offensively, we can't let that guy beat us? And I know it's a team game, like I get all of that, but that guy can't beat us today. How does it change the preparation as you're going through preparing for a Watt, a Donald, somebody like that?
Yeah, no, you have to talk about it. I mean, it's a very personnel-driven league. I'd say, not too dissimilar. It's the same thing we're kind of going through with TJ. But even though when you're playing against those players, like everybody says that, everybody knows that, everybody talks about it, but you have to be very hyper-focused and diligent. Okay, this play, where is he? How are we accounting for him? We think we're okay. We think we're going to hold up. Does this make sense? So, and how do you attack? Every player has strengths. Players have weaknesses. So you want to try to take advantage if there's a weakness or a way to kind of mitigate some of the things that they do well. So you have to go into, it's the same thing on the defensive side of the ball with the opposing offense. So if they have a player, he does this really, really well, you have to account for him, whether it's situationally, whether it's third down, whether it's in the red area. So it's a part of your discussion during the course of the week in every situation. You just can't lose sight of it, because if that player has the capacity to ruin the game, then it's on you to make sure that it doesn't happen. And look, if he beats you, he beats you. Like, that's football. Sometimes you're just going to get beat by a better player. But, okay, if there's things that we can do in the interim to make sure that doesn't happen, then we certainly have to have a heightened awareness.
Nick, growing up in Ohio, Texans are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is traditional power. What was the level of disdain in the Caserio household for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I was probably too young. The only thing I remember is just some of those images of Jack Lambert and his teeth and, no teeth.
Or lack thereof.
The physical nature. I think, Mean Joe Green, Jack Lambert, like when you saw the highlights of the defense, it's just how physical they played. You're like, whoa. This is, it's a violent sport. You knew that, but they kind of took it to the next level. And they built a reputation over time. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know how many players they have in the Hall of Fame, but it's a lot. And they have, certain number of championships as well. So, but it just speaks to the program and kind of how they built it. And like I said in the beginning, just the model of consistency that they've established. Second to none. And honestly, it's something that you aspire to at some point potentially be in that same vein. Like, we're not going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, but when you look at what they've done, you tip your hat, and it's respect and it's admiration. But we also know we still have a job to do and just go out there and play and execute. And, we'll see what happens at the end of the game.
I know all NFL games, they all count, they all matter. But to your point and the respect you have for the Steelers, does it mean something when you walk on the field and you're like, it's the Steelers over there, and you see that black and gold over there? I know you don't get intimidated, but you guys had that when you were with New England. When you guys would walk on the field, it's like, well, the Patriots, okay, this is a big game because it's them over there. Do you kind of feel that way no matter what when the Steelers on the other side, like, okay, this is a big matchup because it's them?
Well, I think you just know you got to play good football when you go into that game. So nothing's going to be given to you. You're going to have to earn it. Every team has good players. There's a certain, I'd say, aura around the Steelers. They travel well. I'm sure we're going to see some terrible towels in the stands, hopefully not too many. But it just kind of speaks to their overall ethos as a team and an organization. And it's respect, but okay, we still have a job to do and go out there. But I think it was always playing in that stadium is a really great atmosphere. Yeah. It's a great environment. If you like football, you like being in that environment. And they're fans. They got great fans. They're very aware and they understand football. It's a good opportunity against a good team and organization to see if we continue to build on some of the things that we've done here early in the season.
I can't imagine that had many good things to say to you as you were walking through a stadium.
We didn't have to go through the stands or anything. So it's really when the bus comes in, you get to see some, I would say,
colorful
nothing
characters
for public. Yeah, exactly. Public consumption.
Nick, thanks a lot. Good luck this week.
Thanks, guys.